Welcome back. Phone provisioning makes assigning extensions in their specific settings to a desk phone or soft phone a simplified task for any admin. From the admin UI, you can specify which phones will be deployed to which extensions by assigning a MAC address. Provisioning is achieved by the handset connecting to the Switchvox provisioning server, either manually or automatically with zero-touch provisioning. Let's dive into different provisioning methods and get your users making calls.
Provisioning handsets can be done through Setup, under the Phones menu, Sangoma Phones.
And here on the Desk Phones tab, we're going to see a list of already provisioned handsets along with their MAC address, the model, how it's provisioned, and which extension it's assigned to. Here are a few things to note. The Configured By column will specify either server or phone depending how the handset was provisioned. Phones provisioned from the server cannot be changed from the handset. Line 1 is always the Switchvox user's extension, while other line keys can be either Switchvox or external extensions. Additional line keys can be configured by clicking Modify under the Actions column. That would look like this here. So let's prepare a handset for auto provisioning by clicking the Quick Create Assignments. We're going to enter in or search for the extension that we want to assign to this handset. That's going to display any extensions that aren't currently assigned to handset here. And then the phone MAC address. So currently, if this handset was plugged into the network, it would be asking for a PIN code, which we'll get right into, but that would allow you to enter in a PIN and configure the handset, and that looks something like this. So in this method, we're going to auto provision the phone remotely from the server itself. So we're going to click Save All Assignments when finished, and now we can see the phone is actually going to contact the provisioning server, and it's going to download its details. Note that how the phones are provisioned, what keys do, and so forth, other than the line keys, those were set up when we created the extension either individually or we specified a feature set in the extension templates that we assigned to this extension. So keep that in mind if you haven't seen the Creating Extension segment yet. One thing to note about the MAC addresses, MAC addresses can be found on the bottom of the handset or on the side of the box that the handset came in. You can also use a barcode scanner to autofill the MAC address field once it's connected, and that would be the barcode on the side of the box. To perform a bulk import of extensions to assign phones to, those would be the extensions currently unassigned. You can view a list here under this tab. You can go to Actions, you can click Assign a desk phone or an OpenSoft phone, or we can go back and do that bulk import by clicking Create Assignments again, and clicking the Populate Unassigned Extensions. And again, we can fill in those MAC addresses, and save all assignments when we're done with our bulk import. So now that we're familiar with auto provisioning, let's talk about desk phone assignment options. To provision a phone directly from the handset, we'll need to first configure the server name that will provision and the authentication method. So we'll go back to the Desk Phones tab, and we'll find the Desk Phone Assignment Options button here. Distinguish the provisioning server from other Switchvoxes by giving it a unique server name. And the assignment authentication method can either be by code, so we're going to need to enter in this particular code into the handset to provision it, or by an extension and password. When you use the assignment code, when you go to the handset and enter that code in, it's going to give you a list of available extensions. You're going to choose from that list which extension you want to provision to that particular handset. And that looks something like this. With the extension and password option, the extension list is always displayed, but once an extension is selected, that extension's password must be entered. So this is the same password used for voicemail. The open enrollment allows any handset to be provisioned without authentication for a specific amount of time. This feature allows for quicker provisioning, but should only be used in a secure or non-production environment. So for example, if we just want to go ahead and say open enrollment, we don't need a password, but we can go through the list of extensions. We can press that extension we want, and it's going to auto provision without any sort of authentication. And we can specify how long we want that open enrollment period to last for. So we may have set aside an hour or 2 hours for our provisioning of a set of handsets, for example. So we're going to want to leave that as low as possible. And hit save assignment options when you're ready. So as you can see, there's some really well thought out ways that the Switchvox will provision both local and remote workers, get them up and running as quickly as possible. So I hope this gives you an in-depth overview of provisioning, and happy calling. We'll see you next time.